WBAL Radio and WBAL.com.
Well-known political commentator John Fund, formerly of the Wall Street Journal, and now of the American Spectator, is in town. In a sense, he's at the airport to address a business leadership luncheon of the Maryland Business Leadership Political Action Committee. John, I don't think I've talked to you since you were at the Journal. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I'm on leave writing 2 books, and believe me, you'll hear a lot about those blockbuster books early next year.
Well, it'll be a perfect year. 2012 is going to be one tumultuous year. Your theme today is what happens when common sense doesn't seem so common anymore. What are you going to be telling these people?
Well, that clearly Maryland is in trouble because surrounding states, whether it's Pennsylvania or Virginia, are moving towards more business-friendly policies, more consumer-oriented policies in terms of giving people a break on lower taxes and reducing the role of regulation. And Maryland seems to be marching forward to its own dystopia. And I think increasingly, even Washington, D.C. is looking like it might have a better business climate than Maryland, and that's saying a lot.
Yeah, if it weren't for BRAC, I don't know where what the temperature would be of Maryland business, but it'd be pretty chilly. I do think that. Without that move of all these military and military-related jobs into Maryland, it'd certainly be an even worse picture, don't you think?
Yes, but just remember, military jobs are fine, but the real backbone of an economy is, of course, the private sector. And private sector jobs in Maryland are getting increasingly hard to come by. The unemployment rate is continuing to rise in the private sector. Businesses are continuing to flounder, home foreclosures up. And look, a lot of these are national trends.
Sure.
Don't get me wrong. But the state of Maryland's government isn't helping. I mean, look what they're doing, whether it's alcohol taxes, taxes on the bridge, vehicle registration fees, I understand, have more than tripled. They're not helping out. They're putting increasing burdens on somebody who's already bowed down by the weight of all of these taxes, regulations, and edicts. And
as you're pointing out, the competitive disadvantage is becoming more stark. It just is. And not only that, when Maryland does something, it's usually way late and way short, as with the slots. By the time we get slots enacted, the competing states have casinos with table games as well, which just, people are willing to drive to do that. So,
well, actually, I'm going to say something heretical.
Mm-hmm.
When a state is so desperate for revenue and economic activity that it turns to slot machines, something's wrong with your economy. Look, I'm not a prude, I'm not a Puritan, but gambling, encouraging people to gamble, especially their retirement savings and their retirement income. I mean, is this really what government should be about, or should we really be looking at something that's more permanent, more long-lasting, and frankly, has less of a taint to it?
Sure, but that train left the station long ago with state lotteries. That used to be the numbers game.
You can always make things worse. Lotteries are one thing, but, and the horse racing was another thing.
Mm-hmm.
Slots are further down the road, and I think a bigger mistake, because they're not really, they redistribute money within the economy, frankly, from the poor to the middle class and to the rich and to the government, and they don't really create any productive, long-lasting jobs.
I agree. I was just referring to the competitive environment between the states.
Well, it's just another example. Other states are going off in that direction, too.
Mm-hmm.
But the bottom line is they have private sector job creation policies that are far more ambitious and far more vigorous than Maryland. Maryland is going to be left behind. The only thing that's propping up Maryland, frankly, is if you go to Montgomery and Prince George's County, there's never a recession because the federal government continues to grow. It's the one thing that Maryland has. It has the anchor of all those federal government jobs in the ring around Washington, D.C.
And then, of course, the big question is how can that last?
Even that is not going to last. You're absolutely right, Ron. That is not going to last because we're about to run out of money, period.
Yeah. What do you see obviously, we don't know. We don't have crystal balls. But the 2012 promises to be an incredibly tumultuous election year. What are some of the main things you'll be looking for?
Well, I think that the key is Barack Obama's inability to understand that he is going to have to move to the center to have any chance of getting reelected. And he refuses to do that. His latest class warfare techniques are designed to rile up his base. We're going to see a repeat of the 2004 election. A battered president trying desperately to see if he can eke out enough extra votes by ginning up his base because his record is under attack. George Bush narrowly pulled off a 51% victory in 2004 using that strategy. But George Bush did not have 9% unemployment. George Bush did not have the kind of grinding poverty that is apparently seeping into more and more American communities. 1 out of 6 Americans now on food stamps. I mean, that's not the country I grew up in. It's not the country I want to live in.
Would it make a big difference if he lost? I'm talking about in the overall big picture. Or would a Republican coming in there have any chance, considering the macro problems that exist?
Well, it depends what kind of Republican. If you have a business-as-usual Republican, a stand-pat Republican, I think our problems are deep enough and fundamental enough. We need radical change. We need to address the entitlement issue. We need to address our disgrace of a tax code. We need to get the country moving again. This election reminds me very much of Ronald Reagan versus Jimmy Carter, except I'm not sure we're going to have a Ronald Reagan-style type figure on the other side. But Jimmy Carter looks positively decisive and moderate compared to this guy. Jimmy Carter, blames American people for malaise. Barack Obama says the country has grown too soft. It's our fault. Look, of course, the president can only set a tone. The president doesn't create jobs. The president doesn't destroy jobs. But the president's policies have done nothing to bring us out of this recession. It still feels like a recession, and this is 3.5 years into it. This is the longest recession we've had since the Great Depression, and that's primarily because Obama's economic policies have spooked the markets. They've spooked the people holding the dollar. They've spooked people who hold our debt. And they've spooked every business, which businesses are sitting on the sidelines now with $2 trillion in capital, not investing them in job creation because they don't know what the future looks like. They don't know what the rogue EPA or the Obamacare bureaucrats are going to be doing to them next year. That's why I think changing Obama is essential to getting economic recovery. Remember Ronald Reagan's famous line in 1980? A recession is when your neighbor loses his or her job. A recession is when you lose your job. Recovery is when Jimmy Carter loses his job. I'm sure we're going to hear an echo of that refrain in this election.
Yeah, that's very good. It's like that old thing about minor surgery. It's the kind of surgery that happens on other people. John Fund, thanks. Enjoy your time here. Appreciate
pleasure. And when my books come out, I'll love to come back and talk about them on your program.
Oh, we'll certainly do that. We'll certainly do that. Thank you. Okay, bye. 10:45, it's Tamara time.
Thank you, Ron. This report is brought to you